Morning everybody. Today we're going to go and check out some different ways of doing outputs with our PowerShell commands. We're going to really focus on outputting into HTML, and we're going to use some fancy HTML and CSS to make these outputs look pretty. So let's get straight into this and go and check out outputting into HTML and making our outputs look pretty. Okay, so I'm over here in PowerShell ISE. Yeah, sure, we could do all this through things like VS Code, but we'll just stick with PowerShell ISE to keep things as simple as possible. So let's go and take a very basic sort of PowerShell command. Let's go and do something like get-service, all right? And if we go run get-service, this is the kind of output we're going to get. Now, we can output this in a few different ways. Let's first of all output this to HTML. The way that you output any command to HTML is just take that output and instead of it going to the shell as an object or as a selection of objects, do convert to -HTML. Whoops, HTML. Run that thing and whoop, there we go, big block of HTML. Now, there's kind of a problem with this. In fact, there's a number of different problems with this. First of all, it's being dumped to the shell. Let's fix that problem first. Let's go and get this actually going to some form of output. So if I go and put this into service equals this, throw that into a variable instead, okay? And then if I do $service, let's just make sure what directory I'm in. Okay, let's do mkdir. Let's make a temp directory here that we can pop into for a second. Okay, that's fine. So we're going to take this variable that now contains that HTML and we're going to do an out file. This just basically dumps it to a file. I could specify the file as a text file if I wanted to, but what I want to do is do output.html. Actually, we'll call it output test.html. We'll go and run all of that. Great, and we've now got a file called output test.html. Let's go and check that thing out and have a look at it. So if I go into this PC, go into C, go into, where did I put it? C users mic admin and go into temp. Let's go check that out. So there's what the output looks like. Now, first of all, it's still a bit of a mess. We've got name, required services, all this junk going on here. There's a whole bunch of things that we don't actually really want because when we've actually run this get service and convert to HTML, it's dumped the entire output of get service. So we want to do a little bit of a selection on that one. So let's just go and select here just some specific columns. Let's go and get name and let's go and get status, okay? And then convert it to HTML. We'll rerun that. This is actually overwritten this file now, so I just whacked F5 there to run the whole thing. So since it's completely overwritten, if I go and have a look at it, okay, things are looking a bit better now. I mean, this is kind of like a HTML output, but this is not entirely what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to make this look pretty. Okay, so we want to kind of take this thing here, put it into like a proper table. Whoops, I don't want to search for it. Put it into a proper table. And maybe what we want to do is we also want to kind of color in each of these status sections. So maybe we'll see stopped as red and maybe running as green if we really want to. Okay, so how do we kind of do that? Well, first of all, we've got to really sort of understand how HTML's kind of put together. So if you view the source for this, what we've actually got is we've got a title, we've got a table, and we've got these individual sections of the table rows, and the table data, all subcontained in various different tags. Now, with HTML, we can also add an extra thing on top of this called CSS to make things look pretty. In fact, let's do a real quick kind of 1-2 on how sort of HTML CSS kind of actually works. So let's do this bit in VS Code, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a folder and let's go and grab that same temp folder that I had a moment ago. Okay, there's our output test.html. That's all nice. We can go and open that. We can go and see it. Yeah, that's cool. We don't necessarily want to play with that. We want to go and make a new file. In fact, we'll make a new folder and we'll call this CSS demo, just to show roughly how CSS actually kind of functions. So we'll do an index.html. Oops, index.html. Here, right? We're going to paste some code in. So what we've got inside here is we've got a little bit of a body, and inside here I've got one header and I've got 2 paragraphs. But what I've also got is these things called classes, and these are kind of like tags. And it means that what I can do is I can identify these individual classes, or in this case, this tag of a tag, or this tag of a paragraph tag. Look for the thing labeled blue text and maybe manipulate it with CSS later on. Now what's also going to be happening inside here is there's actually a second file called styles.css that actually needs to be created. So let's go and create a new file down here, and we'll call this styles.css. styles.css. So let's drop into styles.css here. I'm going to paste in some information. Look at this. I've got dot red text, I've got dot blue text, and I've got dot green text. Now you can kind of actually target things in HTML by these tags, or you could, or these classes, sorry, or you could actually target things by the whole tag itself. So for example, maybe I didn't want, for example, these paragraph tasks here for blue text and green text. I've just got this single P tag, these single paragraph tags. So let's just save that for a moment. Let's just save this styles.css, and let's go and open this index.html. So inside here, I've got, this is a red heading, and this is a blue paragraph and a green paragraph. Now we can see that this red heading here has been picked up by the fact that it says class red text. So anything inside here that has class red text has been picked up from the styles.css and has been labeled color red. Now what I could also do down here is I could do something like, I could say, okay, instead of actually using this, I could just use P, whoops, I could use P and then some curlies, and then inside here I could do something like color is aqua. That's nice. So if I go and save that, what this is going to do is it's going to change everything with P to that color of aqua. So let's go and refresh this. Now we should see, look, the blue paragraph and the green paragraph are now labeled accordingly. But let's go back here now. So because instead of targeting the entirety of P, I just want to target some individual classes called either blue text or green text. So let's come back down here and let's go and change this class is equal to blue dash text. Okay, close that off. Whoops, we need to put that in the tag. There we go, put it in correctly. Save that, and then we're going to go and run it again. And what we can see is that tag, that class tag, has actually overridden the default from the P tag that's in the CSS style sheet. We could also change the whole thing as well. So for example, maybe we wanted to change fonts. So let's go into our code back here. Let's go into our style.css. Maybe we want to come to the top. If we go into body, so that's going to change the whole thing or everything that's being kind of displayed. Put some curly brackets around there. Maybe we'll do font dash family is going to be, what do I want? Monospace, that'll be nice. And maybe we want on a new line font size, let's do large. Wonderful. So we're going to go and Control S that again, and we'll just refresh this, and we'll see this has now changed to monospace, and it's nice and big. So let's go and pull this back, because what we want to do is we want to use these kind of techniques to kind of make this look good. All right. And this is where things get a little bit more complicated. In fact, this is where things get a lot more complicated, because what we actually need to do is we actually need to kind of manipulate this output test.html. So this output test.html here has actually come out as this block. Okay. And what we need to do is we need to dynamically manipulate this thing. Now the styles.css here could be a separate file, or styles can actually be integrated directly into your HTML file as well if you really wanted to. That's what we're going to kind of do with this. But we're not going to rewrite this after it's been produced, i.e. we're not going to do output.html, go in there and edit it. We're going to use PowerShell code to actually change things dynamically dependent on the output of get service. Bear with me, it will make sense, I promise. So what I need to do is, I've got some notes over here because I'm not about to write all this out manually, and you'll see why in a second. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that we just get rid of this for the moment, okay? And what we want to do is we want to take that convert to HTML off again, all right? So we're going to change this from service to services, and we're going to put in the big block down here. Look at this block. Okay, let's go and analyze it. So this HTML content block here, anything inside this little @ symbol is just going to be treated as a big string of text. All right, that's all this is. Look, here's the doc type HTML, that's fine. Here inside this style section though, this is actually my CSS. So because of that, I've got things like my body section down here, where I can go and change the font families around. I've got the table, because when we go and look at this, this is just one big table here. So over here, the table width and the border sizes are all there. We've also got the table heading and the table data. And how that's all going to be patched together, we're going to align that appropriately and put a nice little border in. And we've also got a nice little background color for the table heading there too. We'll manipulate that in a bit, and we'll just go and throw in some extra information in a moment as well. We've also got the section called .stopped. Now, this is important because what we've got inside our raw data here is all this lovely information, all right? And what we essentially want to do is make sure that when this is outputted and all of this HTML information is being outputted, I want to crunch through it all. And I want to say, if something is stopped here, what we want to do is we want to put a class in here to be stopped, okay? And because we put a class in there, that means we can then target it with our CSS information to be able to color that piece appropriately. In this case, we're going to color it in red. So let's go back to that ISE. All right, so there's our very basic CSS that we're going to apply to this. And if we come down here underneath, we've got something called the service status report. We can go and change this to whatever we want to do. And we've also got a little bit of piece of the puzzle down here called service name and status. Now let's just go and have a look at what this actually looks like. So if I take this information here, okay, so let's go grab that. And let's go make another file here called test.html. Okay, let's go pop that in there and save it. Let's go and run this and let's go and see what it actually looks like. So let's go back to temp. Let's go take that test.html. That's what it looks like at the moment. That's cool, but there's a big block missing. Obviously, at this point, we've got kind of a little bit of a framework going on. We've got some titles set up, but we need to populate all of this with data. And that's going to come from my get service command up at the top here. More to the point, that's going to come from this $services variable that we've declared. So let's go down here, and what we need is quite a fancy block of code, because we need to now start writing all that TR and TD and TR and TD for each individual line of each service that's coming out. So we need a loop to do this, to kind of loop through every single service output and decide on how we're going to write that as HTML. This is the code that does it. It looks complicated, but to be honest, if you break it down, it's not that bad. So for each service in services, so we know if we go and run this block here, this $services, and we have a look at $services, okay, there's everything in that $services. All right, so we want to crunch through each one in turn, because since this is an array, what we can do is we can see services 0. There we go, services 1, services 2, and so on and so forth. I want to crunch through each one of these and have a look to see if it's stopped or if it started. So if we go and look at this for each loop down here, for each $service in services, status class is equal to this block. So status class is a new variable, okay? And what we need to do is we need to decide if this class needs to exist or not, depending on if it started or stopped. So if we look, it says if service.status is equal to stopped, then status class is equal to stopped. Cool. Else it's blank. Cool. So we've got this line down here, HTML content plus equals. So we're going to take that existing HTML, all of the HTML we've got up here, and we're going to plus equals, i.e. we're going to add another line to it. All right, we're going to keep additionally adding more and more lines to that single block of HTML text. So if we look, we've got tr table row class is equal to status class, and then td is equal to service.name. So the service.name here, in this case, let's take, for example, the very first one. Okay, so services.0. The first service name here is going to be this, AARSVC underscore 139, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this is set to a status of stopped. So since it's set to a status of stopped, okay, what's going to happen is this $status class is going to be set to stopped. So what we've got now here is a tr class, which is equal to stopped, which is then going to be picked up by the CSS and therefore color that line red when it's rendered. Okay. We're also going to take the service status and we're going to put it in TD over here as well. So we're going to have this service name and this status, but it's going to be in the HTML file with an appropriate tag of stopped that CSS is going to pick up. As we continue on and get into other different services, there might be services that are actually started. Let's find a random service that's actually started. It's not going to work. There we go. So broker infrastructure is running. So for this one, once it starts to crunch its way through, writing each individual line as it goes, and it gets down to one that's actually running, the service status is not going to be stopped. So the else is going to kick in here, and that's going to be blank. So for the line when something is running, what's going to happen is the tr class, the status class, is going to be completely blank. It's not going to pick up this stopped color of red. And what it's going to do is it's just going to be normal text render. It's not going to be colored. It's not going to be overwritten. That's cool. But we've got the top of the HTML document. We've got that for each loop in the middle there to write out all the table. And then we need to kind of close off that HTML document underneath. So we need one final block underneath the bottom of this, which is this. So HTML content plus equals, again, adding additional content to the bottom of closing the body, closing the table, closing the body, closing the HTML. Sorry, closing the table body, then closing the table, then closing the body, then closing the HTML, completely closing off that document. So now this will construct and build up our entire HTML content. I mean, if I go and run this, you can actually go and see this output. So we'll run the whole thing. And now if we do $HTML content, there's the whole HTML content that has been constructed. And notice everything that has actually got a stopped or a stopped service has received a tr class of stopped. And everything that's a running service has received a tr class of blank. Okay. So let's go and run through this. We could do an else if here as well if we wanted to, so we could have them red and green, but we'll just stick with this for the moment. We still need to kind of output that file. So let's get a little bit of another block of code down here. I'm going to change this path because we're in the correct current directory anyway. We're in this temp directory. And we're going to take this HTML content that we've just seen, and we're going to send it out file just like we did before, just at the start of this demo, and we're going to encode that to UTF-8, and we're going to start that process of output path. Now, interestingly, this, the start process, what it will do is it will detect what program you've got set to automatically open HTML. So in this case, this is Edge on my machine. So if I go and run this whole thing, boom, look at that. We've got a lovely service status report down here where we've got things like the service name and the status of that service, and appropriately whether it's colored or not. Now we could go and manipulate this a little more. We're just changing around this CSS file. So maybe if we come up here, we go into the head of this document up here. Let's just change this around. There we go. Let's go zoom out a little bit. Right, so we're up here inside the head. We've got the style section down here. So maybe we want to manipulate the style. What do we want to do? Well, this service status report down here, maybe we want to shift that across and sort of centerize it as well. So let's go and take some information here. And let's go and paste in another element, which is just to manipulate that H1 there. That H1 tag, and go and give me a text align of center. Let's go and rerun and reprocess this. There we go, service status report. That's been nicely shifted over. Now, another cool thing we could do is maybe we want to go and change around this background color a little bit. So maybe we want to say, okay, our table heading background color is not that. Maybe we'll set this to gray down here. There we go. That's interesting. So service name, status, gray. No, maybe we'll do a light blue. Let's go and run that. There we go. That looks nice. The service and name and status is light blue. Now we want to identify this table data a little bit better. One of the cool things we can actually do is we can do an nth option and a hover option. So if I come in here, drop down just under here. The order of this doesn't actually really matter, but we kind of want to organize it a bit better. So we've got this that says tr nth child even. So for every even row, so if you think row 1 is 0, row 2 is 1, row 3 is 2, and so on and so forth. For each one of those numbers that is even, we're going to change the background color around a little bit down here, maybe to a light gray. Okay, and we'll change the hover background color to this F1, 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 F1. That'll be fine. So let's go and run that. And what we should find is, oh, our hover is working. Our light grey isn't working. Maybe I don't have a... Let's take the hash out of that, sorry. There we go. So we can see now we've got this like nth process. So what we're doing is we're taking our information, and you can apply this logic to kind of any output you're getting inside PowerShell. We could even combine multiple things together if we really want to. I mean, it doesn't have to literally be just something like this. Maybe we want to break this down a little bit closer to, let's do services, let's do total services is equal to this. Maybe we'll do $services is equal to $total services, and we'll take the first 10 services inside there. We'll do 0.9. Let's go and rerun that. There we go. There's the first 9 services. So you can see we get these like little status reports set up, and they're kind of looking a little bit nicer. We could change the backgrounds. We could manipulate things around if we really want to. All we've got to do really at this point is fiddle with the CSS to make things look a little bit easier or a little bit nicer. So maybe what I want to do is maybe I want to say .stopped, .started. Maybe I want to change some more colors around. So, I mean, that would be logical, wouldn't it? We'd have a stopped color and we'd have a started color. So maybe I want to do color is equal to green, because green means go and red means stop. Maybe we want to go and change this around a little bit as well. So we've got the status class. So we've got an if statement. If service state is equal to stop, set it to stopped. Else if service status, let's go change this around, put an else if instead, else if running, because that's what the service statuses are. Let's just go and double check that. Yep, running. Okay, if it's running, I've set this to .started. Yeah, that's fine. Let's change this to started. Okay. And we'll just put a final else in there for that double quotes. So let's go and rerun that block of code, and now we can see this has changed to green. So very simply what I've actually managed to do is write another little bit of else if inside here just to change that tag again. And if we go and have a look at the HTML for this, let's go view page source, what you'll see is there's the actual table itself, and notice I've got a class called started for this one that's running, and I've got a class called stopped for this one that's stopped. And each of these are retrieving this .stopped and .started class tags up here from the section within the style within the CSS. So you can have a play around with this code if you want to, and I'll put a link to some of the code at the bottom of the video onto one of my GitHubs. And yeah, have a go with it. Have a go with CSS. If you really want to go for CSS learning in detail, to be truthfully honest, W3C schools is probably where you want to be. W3C schools? There we go. Sorry, W3 schools, not W3C schools. That's something different. My bad. So if you come in here and you go into the CSS tutorials, follow through this CSS tutorial. It teaches you about padding and margins and selectors and syntaxes and all sorts of stuff. Basically how to make things look a bit pretty. So maybe you go and learn about rounded corners down here and how to kind of make a table nicely rounded corners. So we've got things like rounded corners 1, rounded corners 2. We can go and try that for ourselves on here as well. You've got this interactive process to go and play around with things inside something inside our environment with these different ID tags. So play about with CSS a bit more, maybe make some pretty looking reports, but there we go. That's how you can take an output and make that output look really pretty. And then maybe what you could do is take that information and throw it onto a web server of some sort. Maybe you could take this information and attach this to emails, do whatever you actually want to do with it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and yeah, join me next time for some more PowerShell info. See ya. And you know the routine, hashtag like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me next time. Goodbye.